Hi, how's your Sunday? Are you having a good day? I hope I can make your day even better by sharing these helpful tips to speak English better. I know how helpful they are since I've tried all of them. Well, English is not my first language, so I needed to practice a lot, especially when it comes to speaking. Of course, it still depends on you as the learner, but try them, see which works on you, then use it. Tip number 1 is to do shadowing. This, I think, is one of the most effective techniques, mainly because usually learners have problems with who are they going to speak with, or they don't know enough vocabulary to use in certain conversations. Well, I have good news for you. You can still engage in conversations through shadowing. This is a technique where you imitate or mimic what a person says. If you're going to try this, I suggest that you choose a specific person first. Say you want how this person speaks, so you want to speak like them. This is important because if you're going to imitate random people at the same period of time, you might get confused because of different accents that you're hearing. So how are you going to do this? Watch a video of that person speaking, then try to imitate accurately. If you want, you may also record yourself and that person, then try to compare after if you are exactly saying how the person says the sentences. Tip number 2 is to read aloud. What is reading aloud? Well, it's just reading. There's nothing really special about it aside from the fact that you're using your mouth and you're reading the words out loud. Well, this is still a good practice, especially if you're having trouble with some sounds. Let's say you have difficulty pronouncing the words with the letter R. You may go ahead, search on the internet for reading materials with that sound, and then try to practice. Tip number 3 is to record your voice while you're speaking. I've mentioned this already. You might not feel like listening to your own voice while you're speaking. Well, I also cringe whenever I listen to my own voice, but I bear with it. I have to endure the whole process and tell myself, you've got to do this or else you won't be able to improve. You may record while reading aloud, speaking with someone, or if you want, you can also make a daily log where you freely talk about what you did on that day. I even remember myself recording some of my classes just for my reference. At the end of the day, I listen to my recordings and check whether I had pronunciation mistakes or if I sounded monotone in class. Through this, you could also track your improvement. Just keep those records, listen to them after a few months, then evaluate yourself if you still sound the same or not. Tip number 4 is to watch English shows, especially TV series. You've probably heard this advice millions of times, and that's just because it's very effective. I've come across with young learners who at a very young age can converse in English and know advanced vocabulary. That's just because of watching English cartoons. You might be thinking now that they're young so they can learn languages easier and faster than adults. But don't tell that to yourself. Don't give yourself an excuse to not learn a language. You can also do that. Now, going back to the technique, you have to identify first what's your goal in learning how to speak English. Do you want to learn it because you want to engage in conversations with your foreigner friends, or do you want to use it for traveling? This will be your basis in choosing English shows. Say you're a student and you're studying in an international school. You want to understand your classmates and your teachers more, so you may go ahead choose an English show which setting is the school. This way, you'll get exposed to vocabulary words which you need and English expressions or phrases that are useful in those situations. Also, the reason why I prefer TV series to movies is because of the consistency of the characters. If the people are the same, then you'll hear the same accent and hopefully the same vocabulary since the word choice will also be the same. Tip number 5 is to listen to anything English. If you're quite busy or you have a hectic schedule, you can still achieve improvement through listening. Well, you might be thinking again, okay, this one's for listening and not for speaking. Well, just think of it as the input of correct pronunciation and vocabulary, while speaking is the output. So when you speak, that's when you apply what you have learned through listening. What's great about this one is that you can do this in your most convenient time. Let's say in the morning while you're preparing or eating breakfast. I remember doing this before I go to my first class. While I was on the bus, I listened to a TED Talk, if you're familiar with it, because again, English is not my first language, so I also needed this, especially those days after school vacation when I didn't use or hear English that much. It's actually better if you listen to the same thing multiple times because you'll get familiarized with the words, so you'll have vocabulary retention and you'll master the pronunciation and intonation of sentences. Tip number 6 is to make it a habit. Have you told yourself that you would read or practice speaking, but you totally forgot doing it, then you only remembered it after a few weeks or a few months? That's just because it's not part of your routine yet. Try writing it on a whiteboard or setting a reminder on your phone. It's also important that you do it at the same time, not necessarily daily, but at the same time. Notice that after a few months, you won't need your whiteboard or your phone anymore because it's already part of your routine. Tip number 7 is to grab every opportunity to speak English. If you see a chance to speak English, then go ahead, use it. Not everybody gets a chance to speak English, so consider yourself lucky. Let's say you meet someone, a foreigner, in an elevator. Try to at least start a short conversation. Be careful when you do this though. You might not want to speak to someone who's carrying, heavy grocery bags or someone who looks like in a hurry. Practicing real conversation lets you gain confidence. Increased confidence gives you comfort in speaking, and if you're comfortable in speaking, that means you'll be able to speak well. If you're going to have a speaking partner, I suggest that you choose someone who's more advanced than you. I'm not being mean when I say this, or I'm not giving you a hard time, but this will help you massively because you'll be able to hear words and phrases that you don't know much, and you will also challenge yourself to use more advanced vocabulary that you normally use. My last tip is to be consistent. Whatever your goal is in learning how to speak better in English, I know that you'll be able to achieve it as long as you remain on track. Don't stop, don't give up, because the moment you stop is the moment you lose your chance to achieve your goal. Hard work always pays off, so don't worry about that. Thanks for watching. If you like this lesson, please like and subscribe, then hit that notification bell. Dream and make your dream happen. I'll see you on my next video. Bye!